What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the altar again, and this time we return after almost 5 years. We return with Trevor of the almighty Unearth. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for coming back on the show, man.
Thanks for having me again. Good to
Yeah.
see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well, man. The last time I spoke to you, Extinctions, we were celebrating the release of that, and now we got the amazing follow up, The Wretched and The Ruinous. For people who haven't heard the full album yet, do you feel like the first singles that we heard so far, such as Mother Betrayal and the title track, is like a good representation of what this whole record will sound like, or is that just scratching the surface of what is to come?
It's just scratching the surface. I think every song offers something different. And it was really difficult to pick the track listing for this record because we actually wrote 16 songs, and then we got it down to 14 to record, and then uh, we finally picked 13 as the final 13. And it was really difficult to let those final two go because they offered something different. It's a concept record lyrically, and those songs fit the record for the concept, but we just voted the other songs edged them out slightly. It's I'll still listen to those B-sides and be like, man, that could fit here. So it was difficult, but there's different variations of metallic and hardcore influences from our entire career. Bands that came before us, bands that came after us, because we're still fans of music. So it all kind of found its way into the songwriting, and each song offers something different, I think.
Yeah, well, you just opened up the hornet's nest now with mentioning that it's a concept album with a bunch of questions now. But
Right.
before we get into the sort of concept, it's funny you mentioned that because when I interviewed you for Extinctions, you mentioned that there was a couple of songs that were left out as well. And but being that this is more of like a concept album, is this at all or in a way connected to Extinctions in a way, being that it is a follow up, or does this signify almost like a new beginning for Unearth?
I mean, it's kind of a bit of both, like Forrest Gump would say, man, because um, it is a follow-up in a way to Extinctions, because I did attempt to focus on the climate uh, with Extinctions only. But things were just happening in life at the time and in the world at the time where I was on that path, and then there's other things I had to really focus on, had to vent about, and the record wasn't quite there. So it's only kind of halfway there to a concept. For this one, we had more time to write it, and I was really fully committed to making it, fully about the environment and the climate crisis where we are living in. I also think the fact that I have two kids was really a big reason for that as well, because I want the world to be good for them. I can't just sit here idly by and watch the world burn. I have to say something about it and try to act on it and show them a way to live. And just try to have a better world for us all.
I almost feel like this sort of like I don't like to use the word term apocalyptic because I always feel like apocalyptic is very like fantasy driven. But I mean, when you look at like the oncoming storm to like now, it almost seems like every Unearth album is almost kind of like a warning sign of tragedy or sort of like negativity that is to come. Like I do get like sort of like anxious about the future when I listen to the March or In the Eyes of the Fire as well, etc. So have you always kind of looked towards the future, always when making a new album in a way?
Well, I guess my early lyrics were a lot more positive. And then as I got a little bit older, into my mid 20s, I saw that things were just going wrong, mainly the environment, but also just our social system, just the way we treat each other. Um, People in America being gunned down daily. Um, if you look on Twitter right now, it's a complete war zone. People are just insulting each other and just tearing each other down. So the world is not getting better; it's getting much worse daily. So I'm trying to put the warning shots out there, like, hey, this is wrong. This is wrong. Let's stop. Let's stop this negative outlook for each other, but also let's take care of the planet, because none of this stuff, all of our small divisions, are going to matter when the climate turns on us. It's already starting to happen. When humans get desperate, they look for their best chance of survival, and we're going to be at war with each other, with our neighbors, with neighboring countries. So I see this happening. It's already happening. Russia's attacking Ukraine. It's not the only reason, but one of the reasons is for the natural resources. There's a wealth of natural resources in Ukraine, um, and that's going to happen more readily. Um, So we're human beings. We fight for survival. When things get bad, it's going to get a lot worse here.
Why do you feel that because this is a concept that has been addressed, like Revocation has mentioned it with their style of music. You see a lot of bands, Lamb of God incorporates this sort of warning signs, and Disturbed even discusses these elements as well. So many different styles, not just in metal, but in music in general. Why do you feel that the style of Unearth, that many of us will label as, metalcore, but we don't need to get into that. But why do you feel that the style that we know from Unearth is sort of like the best style to sort of get your point across?
Uh, well, if you want to dip into the term metalcore, it's metallic hardcore is where that term came from. It's a whole different world now. It depends on what year you were born, what year you got into it. But the true term is it's a mix of metal and hardcore, and more of the hardcore punk ethic is to speak about events that are shaping the world. Just throughout history, it's not just hardcore and punk. Just throughout history, art has always reflected humanity at the time. And I think with music being this heavy and this aggressive, and the fact that our roots, it's first we were in thrash metal into thrash metal as kids, but as we got into hardcore and punk, we found that it's more meaningful to speak about stuff that matters and not about love songs and sing about dragons and wizards. I'm not criticizing bands that do so much. It's not for me. My father was a child of the '60s. I grew up watching, reruns of Woodstock, the original Woodstock, where most of the bands were singing about something that mattered. Big protests against the Vietnam War, most notably. So I always had that instilled in me that if you're going to sing songs, sing. If you have a platform, sing about something that matters to the world, and try to inspire a positive change.
Is there almost like a lot of research that's involved in a way? Like, are you either looking at the news or reading certain novels or listening to podcasts?
It's painstaking research. And this one, because it's the first actual concept record, it took me a long time. I'm always educating myself in the environment, but this one, because I wanted to make it correct, so I knew I'd be asked questions. I really put a lot of time, and I missed deadlines to record with Will Putney. So the record kept on getting delayed and delayed and delayed, even though the majority of the music was tracked. So some stuff they didn't have to track yet because they knew certain songs weren't done lyrically and vocally. But I had to get there. I had to get it right. I couldn't just put down something. I had to put down something that meant something and actually tied the record together.
Well, it's great that you're able to, address, all these important things in the world. But, we live in a world full of negativity. And, a lot of people like to create art as a means of escapism or a means of catharsis in a way. But when you almost kind of have to use this negativity as the fuel to your fire, does that make the creative process just as deteriorating as it can be cathartic in a way?
It was a dark winter finishing this record. So I had a bunch of lyrics when we went to the studio. It was 2021, so I think we hit like October, November. So I had a good half of the record, but then I stopped. I couldn't finish, and I kept on going back and just trying to get it. And it was the winter hit, and winter's it's dark and cold up here. And doing that research, it was really difficult to get through it. As soon as the winter started to end, I started to ramp up a bit more. Yeah, it's not fun to realize how fast the world is deteriorating, how many species are going extinct, and just how much life on Earth is going to get worse for us all. But the record's not all doom, man. Call of Existence is a song that was actually inspired by David Attenborough. For many years on tour, we switched back to the van years ago, a company called Green Vans. And we would always spend our nights. It was Chris, our bassist, and our old drummer Nick. After the gig, we always get to the hotel and watch the Planet Earth series. And the in particular series called Our Planet, he focuses on, yes, this is all going wrong. This is what is happening. These species are dying. But it also gave the light, like if we take care of these areas, and it shows examples of if humanity just leaves these areas alone or takes care of them, nature will repair itself. And so that song is directly about that. It's about, how we can make a positive change.
When it is there ever a time though where your own personal life, because you know the very famous saying, one of my favorite artists, Henry Matisse, said that every painting is a self-portrait in a way. So being that it's still coming from you, is there ever a time where your personal life, especially being a father and raising kids in a world like this, does your own personal life or personal emotions also help dictate your lyrical direction as well, or are you trying in a way to completely maybe not make this about you and make it more about the message?
It's 100% about the message, but I can't help but have my personal feelings mixed in. I mean, I was like most humans. I can't say all of them because I see what people do and say and do to each other and say. But if you have empathy, you should care for not just yourself, but for your fellow man, and not only just your fellow man, but the world's creatures. Um, and I don't understand how we can just obliterate other people, other animals, the way we do, and with zero care. And for the last record, Extinctions, the last song on the record is called One with the Sun. Um, and my daughter's name is Sunny, and she's actually in the video. So it was directly influenced by her to write that song about just the ending of the world if we don't do better.
And I mean, like, and forgive me if this question's a little too personal, but like, as a kid, I was a small child when 9/11 happened, for example. I wasn't aware of war or turmoil. So my parents always like told me like things were going to be okay in a way, just as a means so I didn't, grow up, hating the world, which I ended up doing anyway, but like but like, do you also try to maybe encourage, not even just with your children, but with your fans as well, like, that there is also a world worth fighting for, and that there is, like, we should all still be there for each other, like, because you mentioned that even a lot of your early lyrics do have positive intention behind it. Could maybe like positive experiences come from having to use this fuel behind your fire?
Oh, of course. I mean, I'm still a positive person. It's still in me. I'm saying these things because I want to inspire change. I can't just sit here and be like, oh well, everything's fine, because it's not fine. So I'm not telling my kids it's all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help them to learn to recycle, to learn to eat less meat, to learn to care for others, to learn to care for animals, to plant vegetables and fruits outside, to plant the apple trees in the yard. I know not everyone has that luxury, but these are just things you can do, small things to inspire positive change. If everyone does a little bit, it really adds up quick, because there's over 8 billion of us now, and that number is only going to increase.
Yeah, because I mean, even though this is a fucked up world, I also do think that there is plenty of beauty in it as well. When I go to a show, like, people just, there's such an essence of camaraderie and love behind it that like it almost seems like that the positivity that we long for and search for is prevalent at the shows. And for the many times I've seen on Earth, you have such positive and awesome fans as well, that like I think that with the negativity that you address in your lyrics, it all translates to a positive experience.
The beauty of the world is worth fighting for. And even like you're saying at the shows, we just finished the tour in Europe, and the circle pit's getting going. It's a hot, sweaty club. People fall down. The first words I say are "pick them up," but I don't have to say that. People pick them up right away. It's just part of the camaraderie, like you said, just the kinship with everyone in the room. I think the internet is a wasteland right now of people, keyboard warriors attacking each other. But when you're in a space like that together, you feel you're human. You feel it you feel positivity with other people. So yeah, the internet's kind of a really negative place for us all to be and to live. So I think that people should just use it maybe as a platform to post about things once in a while, but not live on there and express negative views, throughout the day.
What I did for the internet, and sorry to all my friends watching this, don't take it personally, but I unfollowed everybody. I unfollowed every single person, and all I see is band pages, art events, Secret NYC, which shows cool underground events happening, all just nonstop events and funny memes. So it is possible to make the internet a positive place. It just taking all that time to unfollow everybody and follow the page of whatever business that they have and everything, that was about maybe 2 months worth of work. So,
Yeah, it's taxing. It's your choice, of course, to do what you want to do. I logged off Facebook in 2018 just because it was so toxic to be on there, to see friends and family fighting about the dumbest shit ever. And then just the only social media account I really kept, and I'm not very active on my personal socials at all, was Twitter. But now recently it's comical, but it's frightening to see what's going on. And it's you want to interject sometimes, but I don't want to even bother, man. I'm in my 40s.
Somebody made a video of comparing what social media, people fighting on social media is like, and what they did was they had two dogs in a cage facing each other, and they were barking, growling, going nuts at each other. Then they opened the cages, and then they just went out and just started sniffing each other, started playing with each other. Like, that's exactly what social media is like, in a way.
100%.
Yeah, and because when we were locked down and everything like that, I saw everybody just saying the most vile shit to each other, and I thought, oh my god, like, once we get out of this lockdown and everything, it's gonna be fucking Mad Max. And then everybody's at a show like nothing happened. So
Yeah.
so it's a toxic. I've always said that Facebook is a cyber locker room.
That's 100% true, man. One of my oldest friends in his business, Phil Labonte from All Remains, follow his Twitter. Don't follow his Twitter, actually. Look at his Twitter. He says the most upsetting things of all time. He backs them up with some knowledge, but then he gets called on it and he'll quiet down. Talk to him in person, it's not like that. We've had really adult conversations. We'll differ on views. It's different. On the internet, it's a whole different thing because he has a gang behind, and they'll cheer him on. And I don't like that mentality at all. Phil, call me if you want to, if you don't like this comment, but I see it and it's a bummer. I see Doc Coyle on there calling him out on stuff, and it's like, all right, well, I hate this space. Just call each other on the phone, because all you're doing is getting armies behind you, rallying each other up, and it's stupid. Yeah. It's just the dumbest shit of all time.
And I mean, to be honest with you, like, I think one of the most revolutionary songs in the metalcore genre, it's one of my personal favorite songs, is Zombie Autopilot. And I can't tell you, even though that song came out in 2004, that I can't tell you, like, when you are just echoing "Our days are lost," "Our days are lost," and that title, Zombie Autopilot, I mean, that's what we almost all are nowadays. So it's going back to what I asked you early on in this interview, looking towards the future, you guys most certainly did in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what I saw. I write the lyrics, and I just want us all to be better. And I feel like things were better when I was a kid. Maybe it was looking to the world as a different place. Maybe it has changed. I don't want to be. I'll never be the guy that says it was better back then. I just see us progressing towards negativity faster than I never imagined.
It's an unfortunate reality. And with but in the end, all art is open to interpretation in a way. It's obviously good if a listener asks what this album or this song title means to explain and defend your work, but people do interpret it in their own way. And when your fan when your songs resonate with the fan's own experience and their own sort of trials and tribulations, does that add another layer of context or add another layer of meaning to the material as well?
100%. I had a good friend of mine years ago get lyrics tattooed, and they meant something different to her than what the song was about. But it meant a lot to me. Like, wow, you took that. And I'll back up a second. That's something I've always tried to do with my writing, except for this record. And in certain songs, I'll be direct to the point. But some songs, especially in the early material, I try to make it abstract enough where, like poetry, you can have your own point, but some people can take something else from it. But especially with more like Extinctions and the Wretched, the Ruinous, I'm trying to be very direct, because the time is now for us to make a real difference and a change in where the world is going. But it's important for people to take what they want from it. And if people don't want to listen to the words, that's fine too. All are welcome. And maybe it'll bleed into their brain at some point, and they'll get a positive message out of it and see what I'm trying to say. But there's beautiful music behind what I'm saying anyway. So not everyone can understand what I'm saying. So I'm not up there preaching on stage either. So I'm not trying to be a preacher. I'm not out there. I'm using my platform, my art, in the lyrics. I'm not out there on stage to try to make everyone feel down or have a bad time. If you're a fan and you might come across an interview and you hear me talking about it, I don't hate anybody. I just want the world to be a better place and us all to be better to each other and the world.
And that's the beauty of artists. I mean, artists are the base, the foundations of ideas, and the ideas, have to formulate through every bit of art. Jacques Louis David, the painter, inspired the French Revolution. Look at the legacy of punk rock. I think with all the different forms of art now, it's in so many different languages that it can really appeal to multiple people. But the thing is because every Unearth fan, and when I go to an Unearth show, every fan has a different favorite album. Some people have Watchers of Rule as their favorite album. Some people have The March, and some people have Eyes of Fire, etc. So when you have to play live, and you play the Wretched and the Ruinous, you have to, it's a concept album, so it has to be from start to finish. But if you're playing live and bring in songs from different portions of the catalog and shuffle it around, does that also maybe kind of add or take away to the context of it as well?
I don't think that the Wretched, the Ruinous has to be played start to finish for it to mean something live. I think that's more of a listener's experience, whether it's streaming or record or CD. Live, we just try to bring energy and have fun and bring a togetherness to that experience for people in the room. It's for us on tour, it's all about fun. Like I said, there's no preaching, and just trying to go out there and make the most of our time on the road, because we know it's not going to last forever. We're going to go as long as we can. I said, recently in an interview that I'm going to try to outlast Ozzy. I said it kind of joking around, but I'm not really. I mean, if I can stay alive and healthy enough to use my voice, then I'm going to go as long as I can.
I think Ozzy's going to outlive all of us, so
Probably will, man.
Yeah, I think
still going is great.
I just envision every musician in metal history just dead, and him just sitting there like this, surrounded by all of them. That's the only vision I could have.
I hope it's true.
You got time for a few more questions?
Got all night, man.
Awesome, thank you. I do need to ask this. A lot of fans asked me to ask you this, but next year is going to be 20 years of the oncoming storm. Now, in the year 2000, people consider that as classic as An Art of Balance or An End of Heartache or Fall of Ideals, etc. So could we maybe see a celebration of the oncoming storm? And as sort of like a pre-celebration, what were some of the memories for the making of your sophomore album? Because there's such an evolution between the strings of Conscience to that. So I was just wondering what the thought process was behind that.
I mean, we already did a 10-year reunion for Storm, because we realized it was it was really the record that gave us a career, because we were just touring on Stings of Conscience, and we're in that scene. We're doing very well. It was a great time for us. But as soon as we put out Storm, we instantly had seemed like a worldwide career. And we still play a lot of the songs from it live. We try and mix up, the set, and play songs from almost every record at every show we play, especially headliners. So I'm sure we'll play a few shows with that record in its entirety. As far as memories in the studio, we were in there. It was going all well with Adam D, who's a legend, great friend. Had a lot of fun, a lot of goofball moments. And then we were running out of time. So my personal experience, we're running out of time. And we were about to go on tour with Damage Plan and Hatebreed and Drowning Pool. And we literally had like a week left. And I had like more than half the record to sing. And I got the most insane, out of left field throat infection. And it wasn't strep, wasn't mono. They didn't know what it was, but it was just... it was fucking gross. It was all white, just pus packs in my throat. And like, what the hell happened? And I'd explained, and they're like, well, it's not strep, so we can't give you antibiotics. But I explained, like, look, I have to do, like, can you please give me antibiotics? And they gave me a Zithromax, and literally it started to melt off my throat. Sorry for the disgusting story, but...
No, this is metal as fuck.
The tingling and the melting it was the strangest experience in my life as far as illnesses go, and it cleared quickly enough. But I had so by the time it cleared, I had 3 days left to track. But Adam was already working on a different record. I think he was doing Parkway Drive, if I'm not mistaken. So I was working with assistant Wayne we just pulled like 10-hour days for me to finish the record. And I would do, a couple of lines of the song, take a sip at the time, Killian's Irish Red, to kind of moisten the vocal cords, and a sip of water, and do a couple more lines. And it's exhausting. I'm glad I was in my early 20s. But it got through the record that way, and then that was it. And then hit the road and gone for 7 weeks, then home for maybe a week, then we were gone for the rest of summer, then we're gone forever at that point. We're gone 9 months a year back then.
Yeah, gone forever, like the God forbid pun in there too.
Yeah. I mean, I do get to do that. It's great.
Yeah. And also next year does march 10 years for Watchers of Rule in a way as well. So I was just wondering, because there was kind of like a big, I don't want to say like it was a massive gap, but like, between Watchers of Rule and Extinctions, for me it felt like an eternity. But what was the sort of mindset behind that album as well? Because when you go from Darkness and the Light as well, I feel like that there was a big evolution, because Watchers of Rule I thought was like your most, like, I would say technical or maybe even most progressive record too.
That was the intention. So, Darkness and the Light, we had Justin Foley play drums for us from Killswitch. And it was basically just, it was kind of more of a standard Unearth record. The time as we were trying to blend the sounds of the March and Oncoming Storm with kind of a new twist. So it was more of a melodic, approach to those two records, but still really drivingly heavy. But before the record came out, we locked down Nick Pierce on drums. Phenomenal drummer, very technical. His background is very progressive, tech death metal type stuff. And our players are all very capable players. We wanted to push ourselves as far as we could go. So that was a clear intention from that record, was to, we finally have a drummer that could push our sound even further. It's a much different sounding Unearth record than all of our albums. And I do think on this new record, Wretched, Ruinous, we do dip into some of that progressive, aggressive mentality, but we've dialed it in a different way where is more melody, it's more dynamic, and it's heavier in a way, because things just seem to hit harder. Because my only complaint about Wretched, Ruinous is I'm sorry, not Wretched, Ruinous, Watch the Rule, is it's a little too linear throughout. It's an earful from start to finish. So you can digest it a few tracks at a time. It's a bit easier. As you put on certain tracks, more like pick out a single track, like that's a banger. But I feel like the Wretched, Ruinous, you can listen to start to finish, because it has the peaks and valleys, and it does have the interlude before Into the Abyss. So to me, it plays more as a full record. But I mean, if you are looking for just a full blast for 45 minutes in a row, then Watch the Rule is a great record to experience that.
Being that did you have to, as a songwriter, approach this? Because like when I listen to concept albums, whether it would be, Mastodon's Crack the Sky, or Nevermore's Streaming Neon Black, or Fear Factory's Demanufacture even, like, I feel like concept records have to almost be like approached very differently. Like, I guess this is a very long run-on question of asking, did you come up with a concept before putting pen to paper on songwriting in a way? But overall, did you have to completely almost go back to the drawing board as a songwriter when writing a concept album?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't think it would be as difficult to connect it all, because I did have kind of the blueprint in mind, and I was going for it, and then I started to realize it was starting to become a bit redundant. So I did have to branch out what I was thinking about, where I was going with certain things, and then make certain songs that weren't quite in the pattern of what I thought I was going to be singing. But then I was able to tie it in to make it make sense with where we were going with the songs.
Is inspiration, this is like a debate I like to have, is inspiration or artistic energy, is that really something that could be sought out, like as you mentioned, like with finding research in a song? Is inspiration really something that could be sought out, or does that just have to strike you when you least expect it?
I mean, it can happen both ways. I mean, literally, I've had dreams about songs, and finished writing them in the morning. Like, woken up like, shit, that just came to me in a dream. But sometimes you have to really research it and then sit with it. And you can sit there for hours with your pen and have nothing. And then as soon as you get something going, then all of a sudden it starts to kind of write itself. So I think both things happen. Sometimes it can strike you. I'll be in the van, laying there on tour, and something will come to me. We're, an 8-hour drive, and I just put my notes in my phone, and that's all I got. And I'll keep it. I'll title it lyrics, and so I can easily search for lyrics. And so when I go to write a record, then I have all these one-liners. I'm like, okay, this one, and how can this make sense? And then tie it in, and it just might not seem like it makes sense, but it makes sense to me.
No, it makes total sense, and you led me perfectly into that. I have two more questions for you, and you led me perfectly into this next one because you are working on a song sometimes for days or weeks or months, maybe even years on end, and I've always wondered how as a painter myself, I never like to work on something for more than a couple hours. I like to feel the same way when I finish something as I do when I started. So like when you work on something for such a long period of time, does that make it a little bit more difficult to sort of like capture a moment within the music in a way, or is that not even really a goal of yours?
It's a good question, but it's sometimes things happen spontaneously and can create a moment and an energy that you don't expect. An example I have is one of the songs that almost never leaves our set is a song that's on the Oncoming Storm, a song called Endless. And the breakdown on that song was kind of an accident. Like it was a certain way, it was similar, but there's this kind of chuggy, like almost stoner metal riff towards the end, and it goes back in the breakdown. And a drummer dropped a stick, and so everyone paused, and he picked it back up again. And then the way he went back into it was an accident. It created something unique and cool, and like a kind of a stutter chug that wasn't in there. And it was our first drummer, Mike Rudberg, and we knew it right away. It's like, holy shit. And he stood up, he threw sticks in the air, he started pacing back and forth in the room, tapping his head, because it was literally a spontaneous thing, an accident that caused the song to become much better, and perhaps why it's still in our set. But also, I mean, if you really focus on the songwriting and make sure all the elements are there and put your full passion into it, it can still have staying power in your set and on your records.
Yeah, but when people tell me, like, whenever I ask somebody how the making of an album was, and they say, oh, we all collectively came together and it was all mutual and all this, I really don't believe them. If you're in a band with 4 to 5 guys and you're writing a dozen or so songs, there's going to be some disagreement. People are going to be in their own worlds here and there. But do you think that could actually help add contrast to Unearth in a way if, you guys are all maybe feeling different emotions or in your own worlds a little bit?
100%. We don't always agree on everything. I mean, we've had a lot of member changes, not just because of musical directions or anything. Just when you have 5 guys in a band, it's tough for everyone to get along and agree on everything. Musically, it wouldn't be a band if one person had all the say. Yeah. It's got to be a collaboration, and I mean that's part of the reason why some guys aren't here anymore. They started to only want to write their own songs. And I said, well, that's how it works. We're a band, and not saying talking shit. That's not how a band works. If you want to do your own song only, then have your own side project.
Yeah, of course. I mean that's otherwise you're 9 Inch Nails or something like that.
Right.
Yep. And the final thing I wanted to ask you about is, and we talked about this the last interview that we did a little bit, but you mentioned metalcore is melodic hardcore, and this is sort of like part 2 to that question, because I'd always ask people what is metalcore. And a lot of people say it's music
metallic hardcore.
Yeah, of course.
Metallic.
But a lot of people would say it's metal music that has singing and screaming in it. But I would never in a million years call Amorphous or Fear Factory a metalcore band. And then you say metallic hardcore. But I never understood how a hardcore fan could not appreciate metal. To me, Slayer and Testament and Anthrax is just as aggressive as an Agnostic Front or Sick of It All or Minor Threat or something like that. So what really is the big difference between metal and hardcore in a way?
I mean, the ethic is a big part of it. Like I spoke about earlier, lyrical content's a big deal. But the division is kind of silly to me. I don't really think there is a division so much.
Not anymore.
That's where we came up. Metal had kind of really gone underground in the '90s, mid '90s, and late '90s, and so we were a metal band with hardcore influences, playing hardcore shows because there weren't really many good metal shows for us to play, or we couldn't get on. We didn't have the money to buy on a Slayer tour or Fear Factory tour or something. Um, so that's really where bands like us and Killswitch and Shadows Fall got our start. In Lamb of God, we played hardcore shows, and then we started teaming up together, and this whole new thing was born, and we just kind of went from there. Um, but now, I mean, music always progresses, of course, and we were writing these songs on our influences from bands that came before us. But now over 20 years has passed, and there's been a wealth of music since then. Combine that with the music before us, and music has progressed because people write, what they're influenced from what they're influenced by, and they make their own sound from it. Just the subgenre tags get a little convoluted.
Yeah.
Because now today's metalcore, where's the core? It's pop melodic metal, and why is that called metalcore? It doesn't make any sense to me. But again, it's not talking shit in these bands. Just call it something else. Make up your own name. Don't take our name.
You just reminded me of the big trend that when I was in high school. It was like the bridge, like because a lot of like I know that like your generation of metalcore, like Unearth, Shadows Fall, As They Lay Dying, etc. Like they were taking inspiration from hardcore and like the melodic death metal bands like In Flames and The Haunted and At the Gates. And my generation was the bands that took inspiration from like bands like you guys and like the alternative bands, whether it would be Taking Back Sunday or My Chemical Romance. But the trend that was big in high school was people just saying a word and adding core at the end of it. And then you go on Wikipedia to look up the genre, and there's like two bands on the bill, and like at most they have like one EP out together. So you just reminded me of my the big trend that was big when I was in high school. I said that the bubble letter era of metalcore or bubblecore was big when I was in high school.
Bubblecore, I like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, every metalcore band had the bubble letter font behind it, Asking Alexandria, Attack Attack, like, and hey, I grew up with that shit. I love that shit, so like, no shame in it. But that's just my way of distinguishing.
Again, art's art. You can't criticize art. Just use a different name. I think Bubblecore is a great name.
Yeah, and maybe I gotta trademark that ASAP.
You should do that right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna write Metal Archives a letter. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time and for coming back on the show and for such an awesome conversation to start the week off. Is there just anything else with Unearth that you'd like to promote with the release of this new album in terms of tours or what else we could be expecting, if you're allowed to say at this time, of course?
Yeah, we're going out. We're leaving next week actually for a headlining tour. We start in Texas May 4th, and we head out west up the Pacific Coast through the Midwest, and then we meet up with the Halo Effect to be direct support to them in the Northeast and to Canada, and then we end at Milwaukee Metal Fest at the end of the month. We're home for 2 weeks, then we go back to Europe for a bunch of festivals and club shows for 2.5 weeks. Home for a couple of days, and then we will be announcing something very soon with a band that's good friends of ours for a weekend of dates, and there might be more of those to come. But the plans are in the works to support this record heavily from the road. We're touring more on this record than we've toured in many years because we have a lineup of guys that are dedicated to touring and supporting this record and this band and just seeing the world as friends together.
Awesome. I can't wait, man. And I'll be seeing you at that Halo Effect show, too. That venue that you're playing in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Meadows. It's a fun spot. So,
I can't wait to play it. And thank you for the conversations. It's just been an awesome conversation with you.
Oh, thank you, man. It means a lot. Thank you. Everybody, we are here with Unearth. Be sure to check out The Wretched and The Ruinous. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.